In Medical Ministry, page 58, it says that in this school, talking about Loma Linda, we are to have people who will be trained with the ability of physicians to labor not in professional lines as physicians, but as medical missionary evangelists. So when I went to this naturopathic medical school, I learned a lot of things. When I started learning those things, I realized that there was a potential for us to do this work that Christ has entrusted to us on a much higher level. And I think a lot of us don't necessarily know that this higher level is possible. I felt like, Lord, why can't we have this? Like why can't we put the emphasis where it needs to be on natural healing? It was like we were truly I don't know, like, I really felt like, "Lord, this is what we were supposed to be doing." Like, we are supposed like, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is supposed to be on the cutting edge of integrative medicine, and yet, where are we? We're not there, you know? Hey, everyone, Dr. Janelle Louis here, and I'm driving right now, but I just wanted to, record a quick video just talking about some things that have been on my mind. So, I guess the main topic that I'll be sharing about is just the urgent need to elevate the standard that we accept for our gospel medical missionary work. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the things that the Lord has been revealing to me about this work. All right. Um, so I want to, in order to kind of talk about this, introduce the topic, I want to share a story and just a little bit of my background. So about 15 years ago, I had just finished my bachelor's, and I actually enrolled in two of our medical missionary training schools. They're two pretty popular missionary training schools here in North America. So if I said the names, you'd know what I was talking about. But essentially, I went to two of these training schools, and okay. But essentially, I went to two of these training schools, and I trained as a medical missionary. Now, when I finished my those two training programs, I wanted to I wanted to engage in the work. That was always the goal, to engage in integrated gospel medical missionary work. But I found that the training that I had received, while it was wonderful training, I didn't feel that it was sufficient to enable me to safely engage in the work. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay, so I found that if a person did not have any, let me just park here. Okay. So what I noticed was that if a person didn't have, if a person was, okay, so what I noticed was that if a person was not taking any medication, then I felt that, I knew enough to be able to help guide them toward um, healthier lifestyle choices and help them improve their health that way. But I found that if the person was taking medication, then I didn't necessarily have the knowledge to be able to help them safely, to ensure that there would be no interactions with between the herbs and the medication. And I felt like it just really kind of complicated things because I didn't understand pharmaceutical medication as much. And I want to take a moment just to talk about that because I find that as I talk to different people who, they tell me that they're medical missionaries, and I talk to them about just kind of the importance of understanding how pharmaceutical medications work, I find that there's like, depending on who you talk to, there can be this kind of belief that there's something wrong or evil or, something like we shouldn't study drugs. But I just want to remind you, I want to remind everyone that when Loma Linda started, they were talking about the things that they taught there. And of course, we talk about this in our Dunamis series. So if you haven't watched that series, I'm always going to say go ahead and watch that series. It'll give you context for a lot of the things that we're talking about in this video. Okay, so when Loma Linda started, the people who were in charge of kind of coming up with the curriculum, they said, hey, in order to have a medical school, we are required to have this kind of training. And they said we're required to teach pharmaceutical medications, but we are going to teach it in our way, which is we're going to teach how they work and how to use, like, how they operate and how they change the body. Um, but we are going to teach how our students can get along without them, right? So we need to understand, especially in North America, like we need to understand how pharmaceutical medications work and how we can get along without them. So what are the alternatives that we have? How can we help a person to, which drugs need to be weaned and which can be stopped cold turkey? There's so many things that we need to understand in order to safely engage in the work that Christ has entrusted to us. But I digress. That's not what this is about. So back to the story. I found that I didn't understand like pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics. So that's basically like how drugs interact with the body, how the body interacts with drugs. I didn't have a deep understanding of pathophysiology. And these things kind of complicated my desire to do the work. It made it more difficult for me to feel comfortable safely doing the work. Okay. And so at that time, I started looking for a school. I was looking for a place where I could get more training, a place where I could learn, learn these things that I felt this strong need to learn. So I remember at that time I wrote letters to like different people. I think at that time, Nets was starting up, so I wrote a letter to the people who were. I don't know if they ever got my letter, but I wrote a letter to them like, hey, just talking to them about what the types of schools that we were supposed to have, and if they would consider starting a school like that instead of starting a school kind of like the rest that we already had, right? And so I was really looking for this school. So you guys will remember if you watch the Dunamis series, you'll remember that we talked about how the council was that we should have um, a school where we would train people. It's in medical ministry, page 58. It says that in this school, talking about Loma Linda, we are to have people who will be trained with the ability of physicians to labor not in professional lines as physicians, but as medical missionary evangelists, right? And so I was looking for a school that would give me this knowledge, that would teach me to have the ability of a physician, but my goal wasn't at that time to labor in professional lines as a physician. Okay. So I searched everywhere though, and I couldn't find a school like that. And so when I couldn't find a school, the Lord eventually led me to go to naturopathic medical school. So I want to talk a little bit about my experience in naturopathic medical school. Before we talk about my experience, though, I want to clear up something. Like a lot of times, there are a few different things that come up when I talk to people. They come up repeatedly, and naturopathic medical school is one of them. So I know that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, there's a lot of confusion about naturopathic medical school. I've encountered a lot of people who think that going to a school kind of like IIOM, which is IIOM, if you don't know, is a distance learning school that teaches people naturopathic principles. And a lot of times people graduate from there and they say that they are naturopathic doctors, which kind of makes it difficult to distinguish between the training that they received and the training that someone who goes to an accredited naturopathic medical school, a graduate level naturopathic medical school receives. So, for example, in my experience, I went to a graduate level naturopathic medical school in the state of Arizona. So, essentially, what that means is prerequisites included a bachelor's degree. You had to have certain science courses, so like and biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, those types of science courses in your undergraduate degree. Um, you had to There are a lot of requirements essentially in order to get into this graduate level program, in order to get your first professional degree as a licensed naturopath, and sit for the board exams to become a licensed naturopathic doctor. So this is very different from these distance learning programs that people go to and then say that they are naturopathic doctors. And the thing that makes it difficult to distinguish between the two is the fact that not every state licenses naturopathic medicine. So in states that license naturopathic medicine, like Kansas or Arizona, it's actually against the law for someone to say that they are a naturopathic doctor if they haven't taken the board exam and become credentialed as a licensed naturopathic physician. Okay. So, but in states like Georgia, where, there's like naturopathic medicine isn't regulated, you have a lot more confusion because, you have people with different types of training saying that they are naturopathic doctors. Okay. So that's that. Now back to my training. So when I went to this naturopathic medical school, I learned a lot of things. So first of all, in order to learn anatomy and physiology and the basic sciences, we dissected a cadaver. So we dissected a human body, and um, it really assisted us in learning practically and in a thorough way how like the structure and function of the human body, right? Our anatomy and physiology principles. So what we talked about in lecture, we also saw in lab as we dissected the body, right? A few other things that I learned. So when I finally went, when I got to my clinical courses, or not clinical, but like so we had the basic sciences and then we had like clinical sciences. So when I got to my clinical sciences in the second year, when I started studying like pharmacology and general medical diagnosis, um, I found that that was when I really started learning the things that I wanted to learn, the things that I mentioned that I was looking for, a school that would teach me. Um, so yeah, that was when I started really learning the things that I learned. So there I learned like pharmacology, general medical diagnosis. We learned botanical medicine. So we truly learned like how the herbs interact with the drugs, how the drugs interact with the herbs, things like that, how to use them as alternatives and how to use them in conjunction with each other, which is so important. That was really one of the main things that I wanted to learn. So, anyway, I was able to learn a lot of the things that I wanted to learn. And I could see why the Lord led me to that school. However, there were also a lot of things that I learned in naturopathic medical school that I don't necessarily um, that I don't think were beneficial to me. And some of the things that I learned, in all honesty, I felt were they were not in harmony with with Christ's method of healing. Okay, so I'm not necessarily saying that every Seventh-day Adventist who has an interest in natural healing should go to a graduate level naturopathic medical school. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm just sharing my experience and telling you that when I started learning those things, I realized that there was a potential for us to do this work that Christ has entrusted to us on a much higher level. And I think a lot of us don't necessarily know that this higher level is possible. Um, but Christ is clear. He says that, hey, he wants us to do this work. He wants us to train people with the ability of physicians to labor not in professional lines as physicians, but as medical missionary evangelists. And so the work before us is really great because the standard truly needs to be elevated. And I'll say this too. I remember when I was when I was in at Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine in Arizona before they became Sonoran University of Health Sciences. They built a new building, and I remember, you guys, like, when I saw that building, it was very beautiful. When I saw that building being built, I felt like, "Lord, why can't we have this?" Like, why can't we put the emphasis where it needs to be on natural healing and engage in, like, I remember when so I also took a research class. I'm digressing a little bit, but I also took a research class, and in that class, I worked with, a doctor. He's a PhD from Arizona State University. And what we did was we studied the efficacy of human of botanicals on human pathogens. So we studied we got like petri dishes and we kind of put like different pathogens and we used our botanicals to try to see like which ones were most effective in addressing in destroying the microbes. It was like we were truly I don't know, like, I really felt like, "Lord, this is what we were supposed to be doing." Like, we are supposed like, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is supposed to be on the cutting edge of integrative medicine, and yet where are we? We're not there, you know? And so it really truly saddened me, but it also inspired me. Like, I felt like this is where God wants to take us. Like, of course, like as I mentioned, there are a lot of things in naturopathic medical school. And maybe one day I'll record a video talking about my experiences there because some of them were kind of crazy. But there are things that are being done in the world that we were supposed to be doing, that we are supposed to be doing. And when I saw those things, I was like, man, like I don't know of any Seventh-day Adventists who are doing research on the efficacy of, and that could just be like me not having the social capital to know what's going on. You know, it could be. So if you know of Seventh-day Adventists who are studying the efficacy of botanicals or any naturopathic type interventions, then let me know because I would love to connect with them. But yeah, so when we were doing these things, I just really felt like, man, I'm seeing a lot of things that we were told that we should do. Um, and unfortunately, we're not doing it. And I'm like, Lord, elevate your name, Lord. Elevate your work. Like bring like hell like let's do it, you know? Let the glory go to God. Like why should the glory go to these secular universities? I'm just being honest, these were my thoughts. These secular universities, like why are we not doing it, you know? And so I've always maintained that feeling in my heart like the standard is so much higher than what we're doing and what we're accepting right now. Like what God wants is there's so much more to it. And by God's grace, I'm committed to doing what I can to help us as a church really step into the role that God ordained that we should walk in from so many years in the past, you know? And I truly believe because I have a very unique educational history and skill set. And I truly believe that there are a lot of things that I know that like I can contribute by God's grace a lot to this work. And so I am committed to educating people because as I mentioned, there are a lot of dangerous things, spiritually dangerous things, um, in naturopathic medical school. But I've learned a lot of things, and by God's grace, I believe that I am able to teach people the things that I've learned so that if God doesn't call them to go to naturopathic medical school, they don't have to. You know what I'm saying? So, um, as I mentioned, I am committed to teaching the things that I've learned in order to elevate the standard of integrating the gospel, the three angels' messages, and health into our work. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm committed to doing by God's grace. So, like I've been brainstorming with my husband and with different people about like how can we do this? How can we help Seventh-day Adventists to see that there's so much more, you know, there's so much more that we could be doing and there's so much more that we should be doing, you know? And so one of the things that I've kind of come up with is that I created a quiz. So I have created a quiz. And if you are a medical missionary or a nurse or a medical doctor, um, DO, chiropractor, you know, anyone, a layperson, anyone who is interested in doing this work, then I ask that you take the quiz. So essentially what you'll see when you click the link in the description to take this quiz is you will see different questions. And the quiz is kind of designed to help you think about how to safely use um, these naturopathic interventions, you know? And so you'll see more when you click the link, but I'm starting with this quiz. And after you take the quiz, I will send you via email a video explaining why the correct answers are the correct answers. So I want to start small because I want to gauge interest. I don't want to sit here and, you know, spend all of my time creating this large course or, you know, anything like that until I know that this is something that people are interested in. So yeah, I'm starting with a quiz and I would like to move on to doing maybe like a month long like advanced, like higher level training. So I'm not talking about things where we're talking about like New Start, like nutrition. I'm talking about like how to think about how to assess your patient or your client, how to come up with a treatment plan that meets their needs, how to know which meds need to be tapered and which don't, how to know when your patient needs to be sent to the emergency department or back to their primary care physician, how to know how to come up with a botanical formulation that meets your patient's needs, an individualized botanical formulation, how to interpret laboratory results for your patient, or how to identify patterns rather, because if you don't have a license or, if you're not a provider, um, if that's not within your scope of practice to interpret, then I'm not necessarily telling you to, overstep the legal boundaries, but how to understand what's going on with lab work, things like that, like a higher level of training, and of course, what to do about it, how to truly integrate the gospel into the health work, things like that. Actually, when I go back home, so before let me just finish up what I was saying before. So yeah, so I'm starting with the quiz. Go ahead and take the quiz, and after you take the quiz, I'll send you the video explaining. You'll receive an email. It'll be automatic. You'll receive an email with the video explaining why the correct answers are the correct answers. And then moving on from the quiz, depending on how much interest there is, I would like to do like 1 month training or maybe longer. It just kind of depends on maybe like 6 weeks, like a 6 week training, um, going more in depth. But my ultimate goal is to have a longer course that eventually trains people with the ability of physicians. Okay. And I will show you, because this is something, like I said, I've been saying this for a while. Like, this is something that I have wanted to do. Um, for more than 15 years. This is something that I've wanted to see for more than 15 years. Um, so I've given a lot of thought and prayer to this concept, and I have kind of built out like what a course like this should look like, and I'm going to share that with you. So when I go home, I will share my screen, and I'll attach it to the end of this video. But yeah. So that's like the longer term goal right now. I want to start off by just doing this quiz and kind of doing some like smaller pieces of education here and there. So, yeah. So those are kind of my thoughts. Like, I really truly believe that we need to elevate the standard that we accept and the standard. And I think it's kind of it's a difficult topic to talk about sometimes because there a lot of us, we look at the situation, we say, yeah, we truly need to elevate the standard. Like, what we're doing is not what is not, it doesn't reflect the excellence that Christ deserves. And well, not all of us obviously, but some of us. And then there are others who feel that no, what we're doing is fine. What we're doing is like, this is what Christ wants. And I'm not sure I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if it is, I think the majority of it is just not knowing that so much better and a higher standard of excellence is possible. And I think that there may be some element of the fact that, hey, we are in the age of Laodicea. Like, we think that we are rich and increased in goods, and what we're doing is good enough. And we just, we don't want to be challenged. So it could be some element of that. We just may not recognize it, which is kind of the essence of the Laodicean state. Or it could also be like, it just seems like such a high standard that it seems overwhelming. And we're like, nah, we're not going to pursue that because it's too much. Like, it feels insurmountable. And if that is the case, then I just want to reiterate that Christ is more than able. He is more than able to empower us to reach the standard that he has set and to fill the role that he ordained, that we should fill, from many years in the past. So I want to encourage you guys. Um, I want to encourage you guys that Christ wants to take us to the next level. He wants us to level up in the work that we do, the integrated health and gospel work that we do. And if we are willing, He will teach us. Okay, so that is essentially what I wanted to share. I'm going to go ahead now and show you guys kind of the longer term goal of where I believe the Lord, where my husband and I believe that the Lord wants us to go with our ministry. So yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and I'll show you the screen recording now. Okay. All right. Hey guys. So here we are. I'm sharing my screen, and I just want to talk to you guys a little bit more about my experience in naturopathic medical school, because I neglected to mention something really important. So this is related to the topic of, is this program, when we eventually do implement it, is it going to be something virtual or is it going to be something in person? Okay, so when I was in naturopathic medical school in our first year, we did our basic sciences, so like histology, anatomy, physiology, like pathology, pathophysiology, um, embryology, all of the basic sciences. In our second year, we did the clinical science, so we did like general medical diagnosis, we did like uh, pharmacology, and then also like botanical medicine, physical medicine, which includes like hydrotherapy, um, and all of the other like the clinical sciences and naturopathic modalities. We did those things in a second year. But then in our third and fourth year, we had our rotations. So during this time, I rotated through a series of clinics in throughout the state of Arizona, and I had a lot of good experiences that I think we can also implement in our work. So, for example, um, one of the clinics that I it was like a clinic. It was like a makeshift clinic that we had. We actually saw patients at a school, at an elementary school. So the people that we saw were the parents of the kids who went to the school. And a lot of them were uninsured or underinsured. I think that may have been a criteria to be seen there. And we used integrative medicine. So we used pharmaceuticals, and we also used like botanicals. And there were also a lot of supplements companies who would donate supplements to this clinic. So it was like a really good experience. We got to see a variety of different health conditions. We got to take the cases of different patients, and it was a really good learning experience. I am a serious fan of um, in-person learning, because I think that really helps to solidify the things that you learn. Okay, so that was one thing. One of the clinics that I had a rotation at. I also had a rotation at. Um, we had a similar setup, and this one was at. It was like a rehab facility. I would maybe not a rehab. Well, I did have one at a rehab facility, but there was also so at the rehab facility we did a lot of IV nutritional therapies, like B vitamins, things like that, to assist the patients with um, detoxing and their withdrawal symptoms, things like that. I had a rotation at it was kind of like after you detox, you go to like a more residential, like sober living type of situation. This one was the one I was at was for women, and same kind of situation. A lot of supplement companies donated things. We could help them with their various concerns. We did a lot of different modalities there. And then of course at the main S.H.I.N.E clinic, we did the same thing. But the thing that I think that we can take from that experience is the fact that is the way it was set up. So, for example, in the clinic, we had third and fourth year students seeing patients, and typically the fourth year student was a primary, so we would call them a primary. They're the primary student. They're the ones taking the case. So they're talking to the patient. They're finding out about their history of present illness. So basically, when did this start? How did it develop? And then they're finding out about the past medical history, like what other medical diagnoses do you have, things like that. And then They find out all of the information. Of course, the secondary students who are the third year medical students, like they can say things as well if they have, something to contribute. They can ask questions. Um, but after we get all of the information, we go back to the physician and we present the case like, hey, this is a 47-year-old Caucasian female. She presents with today with a concern of left hip pain. Her medical history is, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So present the case to the physician and then say, hey, what I would like to do for this patient is XYZ. Um, and then the physician will say like, hey, I would reconsider this, or like, yeah, that's great. Let's go ahead and present it to them. Then we would go with the physician, with the attending physician, and present the case to the present the treatment plan or the action plan to the patient, and then we'd go from there. So what I like about this model is that it enables a lot of patients to be seen at once. Because think about it, if you have 12 students on a rotation, and let's say you have let's say you just have one provider, like, and you have 12 students, you can have um, like sets of two. You can have six patients being seen at the same time, and then the provider will just go in with the students to present the plan to the patient. So I think I like this idea because, especially since naturopathic medicine is something that is a lot of the times cash based, it's like a cash pay type of service. By seeing six patients at the same time, it makes this kind of service more affordable. Anyway, so I mentioned that because that's kind of something that I think would be beneficial, the kind of setup that I think would be beneficial, um, because going back to the idea of is this going to be virtual or in person, I am a huge fan of in person learning. I'm a huge fan of in person learning. I think that it really helps to solidify the things that you learn when you have clinical experiences related to the content that you're learning. When you're able to see it before your very eyes, you remember it much more than when you just hear it or just memorize it, etc. So um, it would not be difficult for us to set up I mean, of course, it'll take time, but as far as logistically, it wouldn't be difficult for us to set up a virtual, like an online class, because we already have an online school, right? So it wouldn't be difficult for us to set up an online program for this. Um, but because that is something that is in our skill set. But the long term goal for me has always been an in person school, um, coupled with a lifestyle center and a clinic in the city. And we talked about that in the Dunamis series as well, that this is the model that we were told that we should have. Okay. So, two other elements from my educational experiences that I would also like to implement in an in person school are standardized patients and simulation labs. So, I'll talk a little bit about those. Um, Standardized patients, basically, a standardized patient is an actor, and there's someone who um, basically what would happen in naturopathic medical school is that we would have milestone exams where we would have standardized patients come in and they would be pretending to have a certain condition. Okay, so essentially we would have to go into the room and do all the preliminary things and then interview the patient, perform a physical exam, and then come up with a diagnosis, like say the most likely diagnosis, and then other differentials that we are considering for this patient. And then we'd say our proposed treatment plan. Okay. And so this was kind of our milestone exam. We had four, I believe four of them. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. But at the end of each year, we had like a milestone exam. So just to kind of summarize, like a person would come in, you'd like, hello, how are you? What's your name? What brings you in today? They'll start saying things, and then you're able to take all that information that you gather and come up with a diagnosis, present it to the physician, as well as your proposed treatment plan. And I think that is definitely a great way to learn. Like I still remember things from my standardized patients from naturopathic medical school. And I graduated 9 years ago. So yeah. So that's something I would definitely like to implement in an in person school. And then the final thing is something that I learned in nursing school, actually, because in addition to being a licensed naturopathic doctor, I'm also a registered nurse. And in nursing school, we had simulation lab, which was really cool. I like that as well, and I would like to implement simulation, which of course is like well, it's like I don't want to say a robot. I'm sure there's a better word for it, but essentially like a being that is not a living being. And some of this simulation mannequins have like speakers within them so that the doctor who is kind of doing the or heading up the simulation can talk through the patient. And then, there are things that can happen, like you can set the blood pressure, and then you would, like the doctor can set the blood pressure, and then you, the student, would be taking the blood pressure, etc. So that's something that I would also like to implement in an in-person school as well. So that is why I think that in-person would be ideal for this program here. Um, because it just makes it possible for you to do so many other have so many other types of learning experiences to really solidify the theory, that you're learning. um, so yeah, so to answer the question that I'm sure would have come up of am I thinking virtual or in person for this, we will probably start off as virtual when we do start off, because we already have a virtual course and we know how to do that. It requires a smaller financial investment at the onset. So it's easier to get up and running. Um, so we'll probably start off virtual, but the goal is in person eventually. Okay. And let's see, I think there was something else I wanted to say about that. Mm, yeah, if I remember, then I'll come back to it. But yeah, so let me go ahead and share this with you. Basically, what kind of we're thinking for so far. I will say that this changes. I add to this or change things pretty often or pretty frequently. So, um, it could change, but this is what we have so far as what I'm thinking, of course, like this would entail. Okay. So, we have basically some prerequisite type things like basics, like um, the basic understanding of science. So we have here, like, well, let me say this first, okay? Um, who is this course for? I have had different ideas. Like, I've had an idea of having a course like this for people who already have a background in healthcare, because that makes it so much easier. It makes it a lot easier. There's so much less that we have to explain. Um, so I'm open to doing that, but my passion has always been, I'm open to the Lord's will. I'm open to the Lord's will. But my original passion, I will say, was to train people who want to do this work at a higher level, um, whether or not they have a healthcare background. Okay. And so, um, yeah. So I will say that when you're working with people who don't have a healthcare background, because of the background information that we have to provide, it takes longer. It's gonna have to be a longer program. But yeah, that is, and it also depends on, like I said, I created the quiz to gauge interest. So I want to see kind of, you know, who is interested in this kind of program, because that will help determine, you know, what that will help shape the development of the program. Okay, so for the background though, I do have like in my mind kind of more of a mentorship type of deal for healthcare professionals. So like, um, yeah, nurses, nurse practitioners, whoever is a healthcare professional and wants to learn how to implement like this functional medicine, naturopathic type of approach into their practice. Like I do have an idea for more of a mentorship type program. Um, Along with, like, it's going to be educational, of course, but virtually delivered and more educational with more mentorship as well. So I have an idea for that. But this right here, what I'm talking about is this was designed specifically for people who may not have all of the knowledge of anatomy, physiology, and the background knowledge required to understand some of the more advanced scientific concepts. Okay, so that's why we have like phase 0 here, which essentially is kind of like getting people caught up, like up to speed on how um, how the body functions and things like that. Okay, just like a prerequisite boot camp, so that if you do not have a science related degree, you haven't had undergraduate courses in science, to just get you, remind you of some important principles that you may have learned in high school, or maybe you may not have learned in high school, that you need to know in order to understand the things that we're going to be talking about throughout the program, because we're going to be building on it. Okay, so then phase 1, we're going to talk about the orientation. We're going to have an orientation and then also talk about the philosophy of healing of the Seventh-day Adventist integrated medical missionary work, or integrated gospel health evangelism, whatever you want to call it, and intro to religion and business. So you'll see that at the top we have these are like the scientific type courses, and then down here we have the religion and business type courses. Okay, so that's kind of what um, the differentiation is. And I'm not going to go too much into detail here, um, but I'll just talk about a few different things here because, like I said, this changes. So there's really not a need to go into like in depth until we get to the place where we're like, okay, this is something that um, people see the need for, and we're going to go forward with it. Okay. So there is the care technique, which you guys may know that we already have an online course called Foundations of Gospel Health Evangelism. And if you didn't know that, you can check it out. The link is, the links that we have on YouTube. I'll put it in the description as well. You can see the link to our course, the care technique. This is basically, it teaches how to um, take a case, take the case of your patient or your client, incorporating like lifestyle medicine and naturopathic interventions into your care, and how to, we go over like some like each of the body systems. And in the body systems, we talk about specific interventions for that body system. So you can actually just click the link and see a little bit more about that course. I'm not going to go into detail about that right now, but essentially what I'm saying is that we're also going to teach the care technique in this course because it helps you to be able to take the case of your patients. So I mentioned before that I'm working with some people in South America um, who have a lifestyle center right now. And so this was like the first thing that I taught them is the care technique, because I've found that if they know how to get the information that you need in order to, like how to take a case, how to take a complete case, then I can help them so much more with coming up with the intervention. So I think that this is always the first thing you can learn, the first thing you should learn, just because or one of the first things you should learn, because obviously I'm talking about the philosophy of healing, which I think is paramount before we even get to the care technique. But it's so important, like when you know how to take a complete case, then you can solicit help from people who are more experienced, and that's really important, because I think that it's very important to know when you're in over your head, and just for the safety of patients and things like that. And it's very important to know when you should seek some counsel. Okay. So I've taught them that, and they'll like take cases, and then we'll talk about the cases, and I'll tell them like, hey, consider doing this, or have them run these labs, or whatever the case may be, and we go from there. Okay. So I think once you learn the care technique, it opens up a lot of opportunity for you to do more with your patients or your clients, because now you can talk to people who have medical experience in a way that they'll understand, and they can help you with your patients. Okay, if it's something that you aren't fully equipped to handle. Okay, so anyway, the care technique, and then ethics, diversity, cultural competence, and spiritual warfare. This is just kind of like an introduction to spiritual warfare, because we will talk a lot more about that in evangelism in light of human nature. So that's there. Um, so you'll see hermeneutics, how to study the Bible, how to give Bible studies, salvation and righteousness by faith, the sanctuary, um, and then business. So business principles will be taught here. Okay, now going back to the health area, we're going to be talking about the structure and function of the human body, and then the intro to phase 2. So this is phase 2 of the health related courses, and I have some information here. So in intro to phase 2, we will talk about um, a variety of things, but mostly like what to do, how each organ system or segment is divided, what you will learn. This is in the intro, we'll talk about what you will learn in phase 2, okay? So then what to do when you don't know where to start. We'll talk about our balance framework, which is a framework that I use with my patients in my practice. Um, we'll talk about get a foundational understanding of botanical medicine, physical medicine, so like hydrotherapy and other physical modalities, nutritional therapies, and yeah, different things there. And then overview of pharmaceutical interventions. Then we'll get into phase 2. After the intro, we're doing a systems based approach. So basically, we'll go through each of the body systems. We will talk about the anatomy and physiology of the system. We'll talk about pathophysiology, different diseases, things that can go wrong in that body system. We'll talk about laboratory testing and diagnosis. We'll talk about like common pharmaceutical interventions, botanical interventions, how these two interact, of course, because I'm a big proponent of you have to know how they're interacting in order to safely do this work, right? Nutritional intervention, and of course, physical medicine interventions, right? So we'll do that for each of the body systems. And and then we will do special topics in lifespan development. So like topics in birth to death, like how to deal with a dying patient, how to talk to the family, um, different things like that, like specialty populations. Okay, and then we'll do integration. So this is kind of like a rough sketch of what I want to see done. Like I mentioned before, I have always like it's always been, before going to naturopathic medical school, I was looking for a school that went more in depth. And this was, I couldn't find it. So when I was in naturopathic medical school, I said to myself, I said, Lord, if it's your will and if you make a way, then I would like to take the things that I'm learning and make a contribution to your work, like make it so that we can elevate the standard in the work that we do, and teach your people how to do this thing in a responsible manner, in a safe manner, and in an effective manner. We're told that when we do this work, the Lord will give us influence, the Lord will give us wisdom. People will come to see this approach as superior, and so I believe all of those promises. And, I'm just making myself available to the Lord, see what He wants to do as far as this is concerned. So, this is kind of like, as I mentioned, a long-term goal. I am starting with the quiz to kind of gauge interest. I would ask you to take the quiz. Um, and then I'll send you just a recap. After you take the quiz, I will send you um, a video just explaining why the correct answers are the correct answers. And then for moving forward, I'm thinking about doing like some shorter courses, like shorter educational opportunities, like maybe a month or 6 weeks, or maybe, mental health is my thing, guys. So like I'm able to do like physical, like medical things as well. And that's what, like in my practice in the Kansas City area, I did probably 50% mental health and 50% like physical or medical issues. So I'm able to do both, but I'm most passionate about mental health. So I'm open to like maybe doing like a mental health type training, or I'm open to, whatever the Lord gives wisdom, whatever He shows me is most needed. And so Yeah, so shorter courses is kind of the next step after the, after the like the quiz, just to gauge the interest, and then the long-term goal. I usually don't share things like this, like long-term goals with people, until I'm like closer to doing it. But I really think that, you know, it's been a long time. It's been a long time that like we have been told for many, many years that this is the work that we need to do, and it hasn't been done. Like in the Dunamis series, we talked about the fact that in the 1930s, um, Tyndall wrote to Ellen White's son saying like, "Hey, we were told we were supposed to do this, and we haven't done it. Where are the people who are training people with the ability of physicians?" And so I think I'm kind of getting to the place where I'm like, because I'm a mother, I'm a wife, like I do a lot of things. Um, and I can't do, I can't do this here by myself. So, I'm kind of getting to the place where I'm like, well, let me talk about what the Lord has been impressing me to do, because I think that what that does is opens people's minds to what is possible. Because I think a lot of us think that, this, like what we're doing right now is it, like that's the limit of what God wants to do. But I'm seeing what the Lord is revealing to me is that there's so much more. Like He wants to elevate the standard. So I think just I kind of was impressed that sharing like what I want to do or what He's been impressing me to do will help open people's minds to what is possible, and then also help. I know there are more people who are passionate about this. I know I can't be the only person. So help me to make connections with other people who are also passionate about this, who we can connect and like maybe do like collaborations or things like that. Just kind of to get this work, get this, get this thing, get this show on the road, like get the work done, um, provide the training opportunities so that we can reach the world. Like this is essentially at its core, like this is the purpose. So so yeah, so that's why I decided to share this today. And yeah, I'm encouraging you guys to take the quiz, and then we'll go from there. All right, so great sharing with you today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Don't forget to like this video. Um, Subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, for so that you can get more information, see our future videos, and take the quiz. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.